introduce you to track number 7, AI in healthcare. I have my panelists with me here. I'm going to introduce them one by one, and they're going to join me. They come from far away: Canada, US, Abu Dhabi, France, far away-ish. So I would like to have you guys applaud and welcome them. First, Julia Schollerman, Canada. Joanna Delmida, Abu Dhabi. Carl Saab, Cleveland Clinic, USA. And then Amin Raji, Paris, France. Thank you so much. Well, let's see. Getting comfortable? Everybody has a mic? Excellent. Well, my name is Marwan Barada. I'll introduce myself last. We'll start with our panelists here. I have their bio, very interesting bio, so I'll share with everybody. Julia. So, Dr. Julia Schollerman is a biotech leader with deep experience in building early-stage biotech and at the intersection of science, strategy, and capital. Her expertise is in drug development. She serves as a VP of Corporate Development at 35 Pharma and in Montreal. She holds a PhD of Biomedicine and a dual degree in MBA with distinction from IE Business School and Brown University. And the interesting fact, and help me out guys, please today, hear me out. Julia is learning how to DJ, thank you, in her spare time and is curious to discover new songs. So please feel free to share with her some new songs. And because we're in Morocco, what are we going to share with her? Darbuga. So, Joanna, Portuguese, Doctor of Pharmacy, and she's strategically passionate about health innovation and is based in Abu Dhabi. She's the head of healthcare at the Portuguese Business Council and Portuguese Diaspora Council and the Abu Dhabi Chamber of Healthcare. She's also, Abu Dhabi Chamber Healthcare member. She bridges ecosystems between Europe and the Middle East. She's also PhD candidate shaping public policies for digital health. And also she is building coalition between ministries, and you will talk to us maybe about the Helm cluster later today or during this conversation. And also, and this is beautiful when she wrote this to me, Joanna operates with the precision of a policy architect, and as she puts it, with a Churchill war mindset and softened by a Chopin sonata. I don't love that. All right. Carl is at the Cleveland Clinic, and he's a staff member and professor of Case Western University. He is a professor at Brown University and the lead scientist in the Discovery Accelerator partnership between the Cleveland Clinic and IBM in AI and quantum computing. So we'll hear about AI today, obviously, and also I want to already talk about quantum computing with our guests today. Carl has a PhD in neurosciences and neurological disorders. He obtained his PhD from Texas, University of Texas, and also has postdoctoral fellowship at Yale. And because that was not enough for him, studying a lot, he has also other business titles. So digital health lead for innovation at the Cleveland Clinic. So he screens, coordinates, and co-develops ideas with physicians at the Cleveland Clinics. He's also founders of 2 startups, and he's a senior advisor of 2 startups in neurology and music therapy. So thank you. And we have Amin. Amin is the co-founder and CEO of Bio. His biotech uses AI to detect bacteria in food and pharmaceutical products in seconds, while having it in the old days in days instead of using conventional techniques. In less than 2 years, he raised more than 30 million. So for people who have not raised money, so 30 million is a lot of dollars in a short period of time. He has contracted with over 200 factories, and he has about 40 scientists. So, and he's intensively growing both in France and in the US. Myself, I'm a seasoned leader in medtech innovation. My specialty is in endovascular and cardiovascular innovation using minimally invasive surgeries. I've been doing this for about 20 years. I built an incubator called T45 Labs in Silicon Valley in California. And then associated with that, I have 2 funds, and we raised over $75 million in aggregate. I work at the Cleveland Clinic, and in addition to that, I've created a foundation that is related to T45 Labs, and then the foundation supports individuals that have autism or that are on the autism spectrum. So with that, and I'm just gonna grab, excuse me, some water. Thank you, guys. It was getting pretty parched. So our format for today is going to be very simple. So we would like to discuss AI in healthcare. So what we'll try to do is rely on expertise of our panels here. So as I said, Julie will be representing our drug development. Joanna will be representing policy in healthcare. Carl will be representing neurological sciences and technologies and entrepreneurships. And then Amin will be representing our leadership and technology in biotech. So it's hard to ask questions from the audience, so we'll have just conversations, and hopefully you'll be able to learn from our conversations here. So the first question will go to Carl. And you're mic'd up? You're ready to go? Excellent. Let's start from a broad picture, and then we'll focus in on Africa and bring it here. So first, how has AI reshaped innovation in your field?
Well, I wanted to first thank the organizers. Really appreciate all the coordination and the effort behind the scene, the hospitality. I'm enjoying my time in Morocco, so thank you very much. You know, it's a tough question, so I wanted to actually start off by demystifying and defining AI. Obviously, you've heard a lot about AI today, and it might sound mysterious or magical, and I thought maybe I should share with you my perspective on AI so that we're all on the same page. Before AI became the buzzword, all it was is an advanced statistical method. Basically, you feed data into this AI model, and you ask it, do you recognize patterns in these data? So in a way, you've used AI to answer complex questions that conventional statistics could not handle. So that was the early days of AI, but nowadays, more sophisticated forms of AI could maybe output emergent properties, patterns that are even more difficult to discern within a data set. And some examples of this is potentially generative AI, but as well as ChatGPT language models. This is the most advanced forms of AI today, which are able to sort of, I wouldn't use the word think, as a human brain, and I'm a neuroscientist, so I'm going to give you a lot of brain analogies today. Bear with me. But you can think of the basic AI as sort of when you put your hand on a hot stove, and obviously you're not aware of this, and then you withdraw your hand in a reflex fashion. And reflex, by definition, is when you perform an act of behavior which is not controlled by your brain, and you're not aware of it. And that was the early days of AI, when you put in data and you got a reflex output. Binary yes or no, classification decisions, and it was not as obscure as it is today. So today, the complicated forms of AI, the most advanced ones, are not reflex, like I used the word emergent properties. This is when you engage in cognitive thinking as a human being. But at the same time, it comes at the cost of being a black box. Because I can sit here today and explain to you what a reflex art is. You know, neurons in your hand connected to your spinal cord. They don't necessarily go up to your brain and then you withdraw your hand. But when it comes to complex forms of AI, it becomes a black box because, like the brain, I'm speaking to you now, but I cannot explain to you how my thoughts are coming through, what are the neurons in my brain doing, so you have to take it for granted. And here's the balance between using basic forms of AI versus complex forms where we don't understand what they're doing, though we're using it in healthcare. So that's a general explanation, my perspective on that. How has AI helped to shape healthcare? Obviously, if you go back to the definition, which now becomes helpful, is where you have complex sets of data. And healthcare, in addition to being a large economy, also has clinicians and well-trained, highly paid individuals having to deal with complex data sets. Think about a clinician reviewing an X-ray or an MRI. Obviously, there are pixels in there that the clinicians might not be able to be aware of. You have to put all the pixels together and generate a diagnostic. So biomarkers and diagnostics are a prime example, especially for severe diseases like cancer. Other forms are, we consider them as mundane, but think nowadays about chatting with your doctor on these apps. So the doctor and the clinician and the care provider, in addition to spending all day treating patients, go home and then being bombarded by these texts. And they sit with you for half an hour. Let's say you have a mental health condition, and they have to digest all this information and then move on to the next patient.
Right.
And so they have to make sense out of this complex data. So I just gave you a couple of examples where AI has been developed, has been validated, and is being deployed today. And there's many more examples I'm happy to talk about.
So basically making discoveries and making the physician's life easier in your case.
Reducing the costs,
Right.
because that's what matters, and generating more precise decisions
Right.
to guide care.
Right. Julia, how about you in your drug delivery or drug development side?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and thank you so much for to the organizers for the invitation to this absolutely stunning venue and very interesting conference, and the opportunity to talk about the transformations that are ongoing in the industry, which are truly, truly exciting. So when it comes to drug development, I think most of us have come across the headlines that the next drug that is approved will probably be AI generated. And that's, of course, a wonderful aspiration, but also at this point, it's a little bit hype and maybe even a little bit besides the point. So I call it hype, not because I don't think it's possible, but I think we're just not there yet. So there's a couple of companies that are trying, but we've not really seen an AI-generated drug really posting significantly positive data in the clinic, and that is what counts, right? But it's also besides the point, because what's the innovation is bringing the drug to patients and actually treating the disease. So that's how we deliver innovation, that's how the value is created. And the impediment to that innovation is more, it's not a shortage of good ideas for drugs, but it's the process and how we develop these drugs. And the two critical components in these processes are, number one, how do we discover and validate targets? So how do we find out what is a good point of attack? And then how do we run efficient clinical trials? How do we show that our drug actually makes patients feel better, function better, and live longer? Because that's what we want, and that's the innovation that we want to provide. And there are a lot of tools already emerging, helping us there. So really, truly already making an impact. So specifically when it comes to target discovery, what that process is about is listening to what nature teaches us, right? And nature's teachings come in a lot of different forms. Every year we have about 3 million scientific publications published. We have genetic data in humans and corresponding outcomes. We have patient records, as Carl described, that come in structured form, in unstructured form as images. And historically, we've looked at all these data points one by one, shining a spotlight, but of course, that makes us miss things. So the truly transformational tools that are emerging here are those that are able to bring all these data points together and see what are the emerging patterns, as Carl says, what is congruent in the data and really points to a target being causal in a disease. And it's well documented that the more validated a target, the more chances of success in the clinic.
Right. In your mind, what would you say, using the AI and all the tools that you've seen so far, how much time have we saved? And then just to reflect on what Carl said, the reduction of time, reduction of cost, at least in our geographies, how much time have we saved just using AI and new drugs?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. I think maybe it's worthwhile going back to COVID, because that's a time when I feel we were all in the lab together and following that process of developing the COVID vaccines. And certainly those of us who live in North America and Europe, we were following along specifically two companies, Moderna and Pfizer, who were neck on neck in terms of developing a vaccine, or the first vaccine to be FDA approved. And Moderna was in front all of the time. They started first, they had fewer subjects to be treated. Pfizer was always trailing behind a little bit. But then eventually it was the Pfizer vaccine that was approved first. So what happened behind the scenes to make that happen? And they used a lot of AI tools, but I think the most crucial one is one that seems very unglamorous, because as Carl described, when patients see a physician, there's a lot of data collected, right? And that in the context of a clinical trial, we collect this data in a database, and historically, these data points are manually checked, whether they all make sense, whether everything has been entered correctly, etc. Imagine doing that for 44,000 subjects, as in that trial. So what Pfizer did is that they used an AI algorithm to check which data points make sense and automatically flag inconsistencies. And typically the process of what we call locking down the database, meaning being sure that all the data that is entered is correct and consistent, is a process of 6 to 8 weeks. And they did it in less than a day.
Oh my God.
So this is a very unglamorous process, but just imagine if we could save that much time every step of the way.
And money.
Yes.
Right? A lot of people actually have to do that process and being checked.
Yes.
So that's huge. So, Amin, are you ready for my question? All right, let's shoot away. So, Amin obviously is a CEO of a very thriving company. And I think for you, why don't you introduce your company, and then I'll ask the question, because I think you have a fascinating process there.
Yeah, so my company's name is Bio. It's a young company. We only have 2 years old. That is solving a century-old problem, that is microbiology testing. So just for you to know, every food you take, every drug that is being manufactured needs to be microbiology tested, meaning that you need to make sure that there is no bacteria that contaminates this food or product. The issue with that is that the tools that we've been using for the 2 last centuries rely on a technology called the Petri dish or Pasteurian methods, where you need to grow those bacteria for several days before they are visible by the human eye, and make sure that they are not there. The issue with that is that it's long. You have to wait 5 to 14 days. And I've been in this situation where I used to work for 6 years at Nestle, and I was sick and tired of waiting and shipping products in the market without knowing if those products are contaminated or no. And that's why you have so many recalls in the food and beverage market. I left Nestlé. I met a PhD and postdoc from Institut Pasteur in Paris that has been working on a crazy new technology that is based on AI that has the ability of detect and quantifying bacteria, not in days, not in hours, but in seconds with a high level of reliability. And this is a true game changer for the industry. And just to jump back on this question that you had, the problem has been there for 2 centuries. The main technology that we're using, photonics and spectroscopy, is a technology that has been there for 100 years. The missing part was AI. How do you find a microorganism of few micron inside of a sample that is really complex with lots of different background noise that could impact the signal, while if now the model, the AI model that you're building, this new neural network has been trained well enough so that they see hundreds of thousands of different use cases, of different products, of different spectral signatures of microorganisms, maybe you can give it a shot. That's what we did at Spore Bio. We have validated the method, compared traditional techniques for the first use cases, and now we're growing really extensively.
Yeah, that's it's fascinating, right? Applause, because this is actually, remember, solving 200 old. Yeah, come on. I want to hear it. It's great. Congratulations. Tell us more about that AI and reduction of time. So how long did it take you guys to build that model? It's obviously innovation. Tell us a little bit more about that technology.
The funny thing is that we didn't build the company as an AI company. We built the company as we need to solve this issue, and then AI came as an obvious thing to solve it. And so we first worked on the kind of simplest strains, simplest matrices. We could actually have some good results with no kind of advanced deep learning models, and so using really simple regression models, etc. And the more the complexity of the use case was growing, the more it was obvious for us to switch to an deep learning neural network approach. We're also doing multimodal AI, so we combine computer vision with chemometrics. Chemometrics is AI applied to spectroscopy, so that we enrich the model in a certain way that can really discriminate really efficiently the system. And then we needed data. The first way of doing was to actually sign contracts really early on. And that's something that in my field, deep tech, it's not being done quite early, and I'm a big advocate for that, is to actually go see big manufacturers, people in the field of pharma, or food and beverage, that has this pain point and are willing to collaborate with you, obviously, if you negotiate well certain conditions. And they are actually the ones that will give you the first data sets, the first sample, and if you find the right champion and the right believers in your company. We started by doing that, but we need more. We needed a lot more of data. And so we were lucky enough to have Institut Pasteur really supporting a lot the project. So they have the biggest biobank in the world, the biggest bank of microorganisms in the world. And they decided to sign a partnership with us, and to let us exceed and train our models on this biobank so we enrich it. And those 2 elements allowed us to go really, really quickly. And so that's my biggest take, is you have to have the expertise on building AI models, but you also need to have the data
set.
The theoretical data, but also the field data. And that's what we try to combine to be able to prove the performance of the system.
Right, and we'll come back to the data set and then discuss that a little bit later, because we want to dive into it, especially in the context of Africa here. Joanna, we would love to hear your opinion now. We talk about innovation, AI, reduction of time from a public policy and from a public policy perspective, public health. What is the take on this innovation and AI? How do we structure? How do we see quote unquote control, maybe, or maybe it's the wrong word, control of AI and public policy? Maybe you should correct me. What is the right word that I should use?
Not control. First of all, I would not put it on control. And I probably will bring you back for, as I connect EU, European policy. in one hat. And I live in the UAE, in the Middle East, with another kind of policy on AI.
Right.
What we can have is a divergence of worlds. And when it comes to innovation and AI and probably seeing the regulation or public policy making as a barrier. And it's something that it's always on the table. And when we go to EU, to Europe, it's something that Europe regulates. Europe has lots and lots of regulation on data. EU has a regulation on AI, and then it gets consensus on the member states. And so we have barrier regulations, barrier, and AI innovation. On the other hand, we can see, and we're talking high level, not in terms of healthcare at this point. On the UAE, they put it as, okay, we are early adopters of AI, and being AI exactly, I would call it the tool that Carl just described, or I'll call it the tool, the big tool, being the simple forms or the more complex forms, the black boxes. So it's a tool. And we want to be early adopters of AI, and we don't want regulation to be a barrier for the innovation in the country. So what they did is, okay, let's put it all together and let's play with this puzzle. And there's 3 authority institutions in the UAE that came together, they converge, and now public policy making is based on AI. So in between the 7 Emirates, each one has local policies, and then we have, like in the United States, the federal laws.
Right.
So they are using AI to review all the laws that were made in the past and to coordinate at federal level to allow innovation to enter the country. Then they are also using AI to optimize this regulation, because any time that we have an innovation, AI should be kind of on a daily basis evaluating the regulation to see, is it a barrier or does it allow innovation in the country?
Interesting.
So this is something that is already done in the UAE, and we have kind of 3, I'll call it ministries, 3 public institutions that overseeing this process on law, so that law is not a barrier, or I don't know exactly what was the word that you put it on the...
I use control, but I forgot that word already.
let's not go on control. Right. So this is like how AI revolutionized policy making in the UAE. If you want to bring that to healthcare, which is actually my area of passion as a pharmacist, AI is applied in the UAE in a large, I'll call it the data lake, because as Carl also put it, so AI as a tool is used on a large amount of data. In the UAE, we collect health data. The major focal points are the Emirati Genome Program, where we have the genomic data from all the Emirati population. It's not all mapped. It's at 60% at this point in 2 years. And then we have the real world clinical data collected like every time that a patient goes to a hospital. And they collect that also that data. So we have a large amount of data, a data lake. And what they do in a very simple way of putting it is like we put AI on top of it, and we use AI to revolutionize healthcare when it comes to public health. And I'll give an example. Like we had a measles pick last month in the UAE, and it was detected in the data lake. And what drilled down into public policies, alerts to schools, and having nurses going to all the schools in the kingdom to vaccinate the kids and to talk with the teachers and to the parents about what was happening. How did we get to that? With AI running on top of the data lake. So it's like here, we're talking about public health.
Right.
We can also go on how useful is AI in the data lake. Right. If you see that we have genomic data, we have the clinical data from the medical appointments, and then we have like all these gadgets that probably all of us, I don't know, many of you are using it on the audience, but I think almost every one of us has a data. There we go. So they combine all the information and allow me as an individual to have in an app, of course, information about myself, my health on a daily basis, and it allows me something as simple as refill a prescription online, to get the medicines delivered to my place, to have alerts to take my medicines and to take care of my health, to go to the doctor, careful because it's time to do, I don't know, an exam. So you have it like AI not as a barrier in the kingdom. That's what we aim to do. And then to be used in healthcare, public health and individual health.
So I think that's great. So we've talked about how AI in our regions are accelerating innovation, and we heard about data sets, and it's great. Well, if we bring it to Africa now, with all the AI in healthcare, there are obviously challenges, and there are also opportunities. So I would like to explore with you challenges and opportunities of using AI. And I think it would be maybe interesting for the audience, perhaps what would be the opportunities, but let's talk a little bit about challenges and what you would see the challenges being in bringing AI, or obviously we use it here in Africa, but it's implementation, infrastructure and barriers. So that's what comes to my mind first. Data sets, that's what comes in my mind. Julia, you shared with us a very interesting example in drug development, where the data set, for example, as a challenge, was different than different cohort. So tell us more about that story.
Yeah, so I think there is so specific to Africa, I think it's interesting to think about two quote-unquote challenges, because I say quote-unquote because every challenge can also be an opportunity, right? The first challenge is, or maybe peculiarity about the continent, and it's really, really fascinating, is that it's genetically incredibly diverse, because we're all out of Africa, and it turns out 99% of our, genetic evolution has happened here on this continent. So those of us who left 100,000 years ago, we're the boring ones. All the diversity is here. At the same time, less than 5% of global clinical trials are conducted in Africa. So we're missing crucial data on how treatments need to be, or how can treatments be effective in African populations. That's true both in terms of safety, right? Because you can have specific peculiarities in your genetic makeup that make you metabolize a drug more or less, or it could be not effective at all. So that's a big challenge. And AI can solve that in different ways. So, for example, we have, there's a lot of projects ongoing sequencing African populations, as Joanna described in the UAE. There's of course efforts ongoing in specific African populations to understand some mutations that we already know make people more or less susceptible to certain drug targets, and then we can match that up with evidence from the lab in terms of how fast or how slow a drug is developed. And then we can make recommendations in terms of dosage, or maybe even a different drug that should be used. And then at the same time, I said every challenge is also an opportunity. The opportunity here is, if we understand more about the specific makeup of the populations, we can also think about drug repurposing. So maybe a trial hasn't been done here before, but we know the makeup of a typical patient that would respond to a certain drug that is approved for a different indication. Perhaps that can be repurposed. So that is already being done in other countries. So there's a project, a company in the US, Every Cure. If someone wants to look that up, it's extremely fascinating. Huge opportunity if we collect the data on African populations.
Thank you. And Carl, so opportunities for Africa in AI, in your field, for example, what would you say? I know it's a broad question for you, and I know we discussed a lot of good ideas as well.
What do you see, have a new continent with sort of clean slate, so to speak, with very young population, Hungary, we've got a great audience here, we're a great university. What opportunities would you see for our students here?
So here's where I'm gonna be exposed as ignorant because I'm here on a listening and learning tour about Africa. But here it goes. So being an academic, I have students front of mind because I spend a lot of time with them. And I don't know, every time I talk about AI, it makes me feel old. I don't know about the audience, but young generation and students are much more exposed to AI and computers than we are, except you, I mean. So here's an opportunity. You got a young generation. In the US, I remember the days when my lab published a paper using AI just in a science journal, and we got a rejection because the reviewers told us, if you cannot explain how you obtained your results, we can't publish in a high impact journal. We need to understand, what are you talking about? That was a few years ago. Fast forward, nowadays, if you want to publish a paper, you can't publish unless you have AI in it. It's an exaggeration, but so here's where the field is going. It's growing rapidly, but just to make a point that in the US, we sort of woke up one day and AI was upon us. Right. And we just had to roll up our sleeves and get to work. We didn't know what we were doing most of the time. And so an opportunity here for Africa is the luxury of being thoughtful about your approach and learning from mistakes and being comprehensive and ask deep questions. And I think, Julia, you said something important. You dropped the keyword hype. So obviously this whole conference is on AI, and I support AI, but I support it from a perspective that if you have the luxury of thinking about it, you have time, and you can be thoughtful, but you can also be inquisitive and ask yourself, do I need AI? And Amin brought up another beautiful example of when they first started, they used a regression model. Regression is not AI, and they were able to start the company. So you don't always need AI for everything. It's not a magic wand. But if you are able to use it, think about why do you need it? In what form of AI do you need it? And as a student, you have to understand that AI, at the end of the day, requires data. No data, no AI, right? And by data, I mean digital data. So right. In the US, there's been a digitization revolution. Right. A race to digitize the data so then you can leverage AI. Now, in the healthcare system, let's say you walk into a hospital anywhere in the world and you're using pen and paper, you will not be able to implement AI. So that's the first challenge. We'll talk about some of the challenges.
Right.
The next step is you have digital data, but it's sitting on archaic computers. And nowadays, because AI is starting to reach its computational limits on silicon-based computers, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we're trying to catch up with AI, but quote me, in the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to have to catch up with quantum. And the reason I'm saying this is that the vast amount of energy and power being spent on ChatGPT-like foundation models are peaking, and people are trying to find new solutions. And the new solutions, and we've reached the Moore's law for silicon chip. I'm not going to get too technical, but bottom line is the silicon-based binary computers that we use, that we are familiar with, have reached their maximum capacity. The next obvious step is going to be quantum. And so gear up and put on your seatbelt in the next 2 to 3 years. Catch up on AI, have quantum in the back of your mind, because that's going to be the next thing. So again, challenges are going to be digitize your data, make sure they're digital, have a policy around digital records so you can implement AI, and keep an eye on quantum for the future.
Can I put you on the spot and maybe give us the difference between AI and quantum?
Yes. You mean classical computers and quantum computers?
Yes, please.
All right. So bear with me, being a little bit technical, but I'm gonna try to simplify it. We don't need to have quantum physics degrees to understand this, but we all know that computers work on a binary platform, zeros and ones, from the old days until now, and we continue to use binary systems for classic computers. Well, that leads to a bottom line silicon bottleneck, because those electrons are traveling on silicon-based chips. So the finer and more precise and smaller chips, the more powerful the computers, because you can store more information and process faster data. And nowadays, we're reaching the limit whereby the thinnest layer of silicon is about equivalent to 10 layers of atoms. So if you, obviously atoms are the smallest in our real physical world of Newtonian physics. So you line up 10 layers of those, this is the maximum that you can reach where electrons can travel through these layers. But that's not enough for us, right? ChatGPT, again, is spending gazillion dollars on those queries that we send them, like, how can I catch a taxi or whatever. Every time you put a query, you are using a lot of power, and they're spending a ton of money on that, which eventually you're going to have to cough up in the future. But bottom line is, the next step is those, when we reach the limit of 10 layers of atoms to run the quantum computing, when you get down to 5 layers, electrons start to lose their path down this 5-layer grid, and obviously communication breaks down.
Right.
The alternative to this is use single atoms as your unitary data storing and data information processing, the atom itself. And as an advantage or a benefit from the zeros to ones, atoms live in almost unlimited states. So when you transfer information to this one atom, it's not just a 0 and 1, but this atom can be in infinite states. And so therefore, quantum computing can provide you with almost exponential degrees of efficiency. More importantly is that quantum computer generates an output and results different from classic. What that means is that when you use a quantum computer, you don't only get faster and more efficient, you get different results. So you can feed it the same amount of data, but you can get a different molecule, make a discovery, decrypt things, which becomes a matter of national security. So that's why I think quantum is going to be very hot topic in the next 2 to 3 years, and I hope I've explained the difference between that and...
The only reason that I brought that up for the audience is just, now we're talking AI and there's a hype as we talked, but I think soon enough, we'll be talking about quantum computing here in healthcare. I mean, I'm gonna put you on the spot in hypothetical situation, and here it goes. So, what technology and workforce training investment, let's just say you want to bring your company to Morocco, what technology and workforce training investments would be critical to build, a company and a robust company here for an AI-driven healthcare here? What would you be investing?
That's a really good question, and actually there's one example that is not in Morocco, but one of our close neighbor, Tunisia, that built an AI company. I'm sure some of the people in the audience knows it. It's called Instajib. They built it from Tatouine, which is a small city in Tunisia. And 3 years ago, they did the biggest exit ever outside of the United States in the field of AI. They have been bought by Biotech, which is a huge German biotech, for $850 million. And it's a Tunisian company. And I had the chance of meeting the CEO. And I think the secret potion is, one, he was a guy that has a huge network, that has spent quite a lot of time abroad, meeting with top pharma executives. So their main use case is drug AI for drug discovery, and they've been partnering with Sanofi, with GSK, with AstraZeneca, etc. But they do way other things. And then he knew what resources he had in Tunisia that maybe not everyone has, is the brains. Here in Morocco, in North Africa, we have some brilliant minds. We have some mathematicians, we have some physicists that are extremely skilled, that usually go abroad, study in the best universities, or even study in the new alternatives that we have here in Morocco, like UM6P. And if you give them opportunities, jobs where they can actually use their minds for a greater good in a global market, I think that's the secret recipe. And that's so far, the best African example that we saw.
Right.
I hope there's going to be other of them. I'm seeing at the early stage level more and more coming that I could bet a lot on. But yeah, founders that have been abroad and are not afraid of tackling global market, because if you build an AI company for Morocco, I mean, the market is way too tiny. And then being able to connect with those networks of local minds that can, that, let's be honest and fair, are cheapest than your competitors in the US or in Europe, but are even more skilled than some of them. And we're also lucky in Morocco that we have the public authorities, the government that is pushing more and more in that. We have more and more incentives. And so I believe that this cocktail of factors will make the future AI companies born in Morocco.
So you think we have all the ingredients here?
Yes, now yes.
Right. So, which is exciting to all of us here. I think we just need direction. Joanna, so all the ingredients are here. Leadership, I mean, is an excellent leader. Ethical considerations for AI deployment in the medical solutions in Morocco, for example. So if we have to bring in ideas or guardrails, so to speak, what would you say should we be thinking about from a policy perspective or public health perspective that would be, from an ethical perspective, what should we put on the table here?
I would put transparency
Right.
of the model I'm not so bear with me, I'm a pharmacist, I'm not an AI expert, but transparency, because when we go to the more complex AI models or solutions, as Carl put it, it's kind of a black box. We know what we put in, the data that it's jumping in. We don't know exactly what's happened inside, and then we know what comes out. So transparency in this model, it's crucial as far as technology allows us to do so, of course. And then I'm just having the word in my head in Portuguese. Sorry, but equal access to the care.
Right.
Okay. So and AI, if here we have all the ingredients, yes, we do, and I am very, very keen and happy to know that the leadership here, because just as Carl, I was not aware of the ecosystem of healthcare and the public policies and the incentives when it comes to healthcare and AI implementation. And yes, we should put AI and quantum on top of our list if we need it for the next 5 years, definitely here in this setting of university and research. I would put these two on top of our mind. And then probably that's the ethical and the early and equal access to healthcare. I would challenge for obtaining the data, because I think that it's something, yes, probably we don't have electronic health data records in Morocco as a national level, but it's not as difficult to have it with the new AI technologies, ChatGPT-like. So it's something that we can overcome with AI. Get a good data lake to put AI working on top of it.
You actually, it's a good segue to what I had in mind next, which is data set. And EMRs, electronic medical records, which we don't have to build data sets here, which to me is the highest barriers and hurdle. I mean, how can we get Pan-African or even, you know, Pan-North African data set if we don't have electronic records? Where should we start? How could we start? And actually, you're going to open it up to whoever wants to answer the question. So any ideas? Let's just go through a quick, you know, brainstorm session here. So here's the problem. We have hospitals, clinics. We have a lot of good people doing care. Disparities in EMRs. So what should we do, guys?
It's funny because you need obviously to digitize the data to implement AI, but the data is not digitized. The most obvious thing to do is to start today prospectively and digitize everything as of tomorrow. Old records you might have to just abandon. However, there is hope because there are language models that use semantics who could potentially help you transcribe this old record. As we did with in academia, again, we have publications and journals from the 1950s and 60s and 70s that are still accessible electronically, because at some point we made the decision that we cannot lose this rich data set. So there have been systems developed, and maybe the young, talented generation can work on this. A model that would go back retrospectively, rescue old records that are in handwriting or paper copies, digitize them and position them to be stored. That's the past. The future, the longer you wait, the more it becomes a problem. This is in terms of transcribed data. There's also voice-generated data, capturing encounters between the physicians and the caregivers and the patients. Have an audio system collect that data, transcribe it and digitize it, summarize it, so you can have a prospective look at that encounter and storage of that data somewhere. It's not going to be perfect, but here's, you know, a couple of ideas that are available and tangible and can be worked on from the comfort of your home.
Right.
Totally agree with that, and that's why also we need local talents to tackle this issue, because those problematics are really local. Let's take one example, language. Here in Morocco, we have a Babel Tower of languages. Right. We have classical Arabic, French, that is being used a lot, Darija for the oral, which is our own way of speaking Arabic in Morocco. We have Tamazight, that is more and more used also for writing. I don't think the open source large language models of OpenAI or Gemini or whatever are good at that. And so that's why we need more talents, and maybe some of them are in the room, to take this challenge, this opportunity, and to make this happen.
Ladies?
I will add to this. I think we have, I'm amazed, one step back, I'm amazed with the infrastructure of this campus.
Yes.
I was not expecting to see something like this. And here we have all the ingredients, maybe not here in Morocco as we're talking previously, but here probably in this campus, as far as we understood, there's a medical school here. As far as we understood, there's going to be a hospital opening soon. So there's AI experts also here, engineers. So probably you have all the ingredients in this campus to make something that I would add to this, like a sandbox. If you have, okay, it doesn't exist at the moment, a model where you could use the data, to digitalize it and then to implement it on healthcare to optimize the outcomes, the clinical outcomes, or reduce costs. It depends on the KPI that you're looking for. But you have also the political will to have Morocco as a driving force in Africa for AI and also AI in healthcare. So why don't we use, and that's a challenge for you, why don't we use this campus, this ecosystem, this political will, and maybe you don't have the regulations to do so. use what we call like a sandbox model, where you can test in real world clinical settings, uh, the data that you have in order to create outputs. And then you'll be playing with the real outcomes of AI in healthcare, that in the end of the day, these are just tools. Yes, you have data, you have to digitalize the data, but in order to do what? What are we pursuing? What kind of outcomes are we pursuing? So that's a challenge that we would like to live at this campus. And maybe in 1 year, if all the ingredients are here, we can have like a sandbox model for one clinical pathology, where you would have implemented a sandbox and have results.
Fantastic vision. Julia?
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines. You asked where do we start, and
Right.
and I usually like to start asking where do we need to go, right? So I think it's really important to build these use cases that will really create value for the populations here. So what is it? Is it a certain pathology? Is it maybe a prediction of infectious disease outbreaks? What are the use cases? Because as Carl mentioned in the beginning, we have the opportunity to build better and be thoughtful about our use of AI, and be forward thinking in terms of what do the systems need to look like to enable us to really tackle the specific challenges here. So I think it's very, very important to keep, focus on specific use cases so that we don't just build, but we build towards a certain goal.
So we have 5 minutes. I'm going to let every one of you give parting words, maybe one sentence or two to the audience before I close this. So, Amin, what would you say to the audience? Anything you would like to say, a message?
I'm just going to give my personal experience. I lived 18 years in Morocco. Then I left. I lived abroad, France, Dubai, Bangkok, and then came back to France. A few years ago, there was a big skepticism about Morocco in the diaspora, everyone complaining a lot, corruption, the mess in the public space, etc., etc. And now, since like five years, and I think you feel it, Marwan, there's a wave of optimism and enthusiasm that we're feeling towards the future of Morocco. And I hope you can also feel it as visitors here. We really believe that we're on the right path, and that we can leverage those novel technologies. I hope we'll take the path to quantum, to photonic chips before quantum, or whatever that will allow us to grow and to keep up with the big ones. And I think that those new technologies can allow us to do kind of a leapfrog.
Right.
So it's like mobiles in Morocco. We didn't had mass penetration of computers, and still when mobiles arrived, people were naturally tech native, and so they took this technology and like you had it everywhere. I hope, and I'm sure that we're going to see the same thing for those new technologies that allow us to go really, really, really fast and to go compete with the big incumbents in the world.
Carl?
Yeah, very quickly. Again, I'm a scientist, so I like to be skeptic, positive, but skeptic in a good way. Obviously, this session is about healthcare and AI. Always ask yourself, why healthcare and why AI? Healthcare, everybody gets sick. AI, because healthcare is complex. Having said this, if you're working on a solution in healthcare and AI, again, ask yourself, what is the use case, as Julia said? You don't want to boil down the ocean. Whatever might work for Morocco may not work for Tunisia, may not work for the US or Europe. Always be careful about exactly what problem are you tackling. There's a lot of problems in healthcare and AI, and always ask yourself why and justify it. Who's going to pay? Who's going to benefit? They're not always the same thing. Who's your customer? And who's going to adopt your technology? And always strive for validation, because what you develop here, again, may not work for the entire population or across the continent. So just be thoughtful of these three things.
Joanna?
So I would think that the takeaway messages from my policy side would be, first, do not look at policy and regulation as a barrier to innovation, or for AI in this case, AI in healthcare, but see policy as enabler of that, and create dynamic policies, because you have a leadership that is willing to do so and is willing to have results to implement. So probably you will get a compromise when it comes to public policy making. That will be the first, because we don't want the regulators to be the boogeyman of innovation in this point. So let's take it out of the table, and if we're working with all the rest, create a solution also in this one, because has been made in other markets. So you can definitely look at it as a benchmark and try to apply it if it's useful for you. Then data. Data and try to use it. I like the challenge. It was very spontaneous, but I like the challenge, and I would like to come back to Morocco in 1 or 2 years and see that there was data, and in healthcare you were able to find an output when it comes to populational health and to your individual health as researchers or as students in this campus, like what this project of AI in healthcare brought to your individual life. And that's very useful to have results. In the end, I will just leave a thought, because here in Morocco we have a very young population. I'm a Portuguese, so we have very, very old population in Portugal, and it's not getting better. But here you have a very young population. So here we can definitely talk about longevity, and here we could definitely talk about preventive healthcare. So if you're going to decide that, yes, let's jump into the AI challenges and let's implement AI, yes, treatment is good, but even the states are shifting the paradigm from treatment and pay per service to pay per outcome, clinical outcome. So why not look at Morocco population, and especially the one in this campus, and try to have some longevity and prevention when it comes to AI in healthcare projects?
Julia, quickly, otherwise they kick me out.
Yeah, in preparing for this session, I spoke to a professor in Cape Town about a really exciting project that she was leading, sequencing African populations and matching it with clinical data in order to allow new target discovery. That project was funded by pharma from the global north, but the deal was to build the capacity in Africa, and the deal was also to give early access to African SMEs to exploit that data and build companies here. And that really left me hopeful, because yes, you should access, what is available for global pharma, but you should build better. And to Amin's point, I really feel the momentum, and I'm really, really hopeful that we will see truly new innovation coming from this continent.
Thank you. So in conclusion, I just want to say we discussed four topics. So one, accelerating healthcare with innovation through AI, overcoming infrastructure and access barriers, challenges that AI can help solve, and opportunities that AI can help create. So I would like to just have one quick parting words. When I left Morocco at the age of 18, and I'm 50, and I'm not, it's okay if I tell my age, I had a dream. So I just want to convey to all the young people, please never stop dreaming and be brave, because with that drive, you can accomplish anything, even if you're here. So join me in thanking my panelists here with a warm applause, and thank you for being with us here.